It actually takes me on to something that I wanted to have a discussion about with regards to the term woke, because I don't call myself it. I know a lot of people will say, oh, I'm proudly a member of the tofu-eating wokerati. And of course, if you take the definition of woke to be what I just describe it as, which is anything that conservatives dislike, then I guess I would be put into that box by them. But I don't want to call myself that, even if maybe a lot of the precepts that people would associate with quote-unquote wokeness are part of things that I actually genuinely believe, because I'm not a liberal, I'm a Marxist. I believe in power representations in the way we should be doing politics. For example, that's the kind of thing that I believe in. I don't want to be attaching anything to a metric that has been created by somebody else, which again, the criteria that they would use to describe somebody as woke is something that's being set by them rather than by myself when I want to describe my own personal ideology. It's something that I really, really avoid, because there's a reason why people use the term woke and non-woke. And it's not because, lots of people are lazy, they just want to describe anything they don't like in a broad term. But I mentioned this on Twitter, but I wanted to do this in YouTube as well so people understand where I'm coming from with this. But when conservative media pundits, right, when people who are part of the conservative messaging sphere are using the term woke, they're using it as newspeak. And when I say newspeak, I don't mean a new word, because that's not what newspeak is in the Orwellian sense of the word. What newspeak actually is a deliberate way of trying to reduce the amount of language people have to describe certain things. That's what newspeak is. You replace all of these different things with one very kind of tiny, narrow category. And that's explicitly kind of Orwellian in the way that they'll use the term woke, because it's not being done to give us any better understanding of the kind of viewpoints that are encapsulated by the ideas of woke or anti-woke. It's being done to try and paint a broad brush of putting everything into neat little boxes that can either be agreed with or disagreed with based upon which part of that topology it belongs to, which part of that dichotomy that it belongs to. And so, it's a really interesting way, if you're trying to create a media dynamic where you're creating a sub-ideology of people to automatically disagree with, and you will just say, well, if it's woke, then it's bad, and then you describe everything the conservatives don't like as being woke. It's a really easy way of being able to get people to hate things that they didn't otherwise hate before. If you're a rich person who doesn't want to get taxed more, and you think that people who do want higher taxes are woke, but you don't really have a care in the world about what happens to the rights that trans people have, then you wouldn't really care about what's happening in the trans stuff. You'd vote based upon the policies that get presented to you. But if you get both of these things, which are generally viewed similarly by one section of the political spectrum, and you just describe them both as woke and therefore bad, instead of getting people to hate each policy individually, you get people to hate the broad spectrum of things in the bad box. And so completely disparate groups of people, completely disparate sectors of society who have nothing really in common but hate the perceived idea of wokeness based upon what they've been lied to about what that entails in the conservative media, they can become bedfellows that they wouldn't have expected to have been. Lots of middle-class, middle-aged liberal women who have become transphobic, right? It's not the broad spectrum. Most transphobic people are men, but these people who will say, well, you trans people are invading women's spaces or whatever, hashtag Labour losing women, hashtag women won't weeshed, these types of people, they will say, well, I hate that because that's woke. Right, that's a woke thing. But suddenly they're now supporting the Conservative Party because Conservatives are the anti-woke party. And so they're essentially in the same camp politically as people who want lower taxes and people who want less immigration, even though that's not things that they disagree with. But they're all in the anti-woke box. They've been decided that they're bad things now. They have been shown to you as being a position, an ideological position that you can just de facto disagree with because it's been put into the woke box rather than in the anti-woke box. This is why it's newspeak. The way in which that we discuss these issues has been reduced down into this reductive idea of just these two separate, is it good or is it bad? Good team, bad team. It's almost like the way we look at party politics, where it's blue team bad, red team good, rather than a set of policy prescriptions and the positive and negative downsides of each of those things. And you're absolutely right, JDM, this is the explicit reasoning given by Christopher Rufo. There's a very famous tweet of his where he says, we have codified critical race theory to to not be the actual thing that it's supposed to be, which is some nebulous and very specific part of analysing American law through a racial lens and through a lens of critical theory, which is a very kind of niche and very specific part of legal scholarly work, right? Academic legal scholarly work. It's then become this broad society-eating problem that gets put into the woke box. That's what critical race theory is, in terms of how Christopher Rufo said. He said, we have recodified this to encapsulate all of the things that liberal America might not like. And then what we've deliberately done is try to get people to hear anything of those things and think of critical race theory, even though it's not critical race theory, but they've deliberately tried to recodify the term. It's exactly what they're doing with woke, and it's incredible that Christopher Rufo can just tweet this out. This is our media strategy. These are the lies that we're peddling today. And liberal media types are just morons, they're clowns, they're idiots, they haven't got a clue what they're doing, and they don't pay attention, and they allow these things to be done unchallenged and uncritically analysed. We should be doing this on the left, by the way, as well. We should be explicitly doing this on the left too. We should be using this as an explicit pattern to try and create that kind of framing for policies that we want as well. I mean, in a certain sense that we kind of have done, where we'll just say anything that we disagree with on our kind of social policy, we'll just call somebody a bigot, and we won't analyse their position, right? So that's a way that the left has been able to make certain subjects unable to be spoken about by decrying everybody who wants to talk about that subject as being bigoted, right? I'm not saying that that particular strategy is good, but those kind of things that you can do to shut doors on certain kinds of conversations is something that is the way to leverage political power. And we should be doing that with the kind of policies that we want on the economy specifically. Because I think the economy is something where we just are completely right. If you have the values of maximising utility, then the left are just correct. And when it comes to the economy, we just have all the correct ideas. We're not wrong. Whereas with social policy, it's a lot down to personal moral ethics. There's a lot down to some personal level of belief. And I really don't want to have to continue going back and forth across those bridges. But with fiscal policy, we just are correct. Like, we just have the basic correct ideas of making sure that people don't starve and making sure that you actually put people in houses. But those arguments get lost in a sea of culture or in a sea of all of these things that Christopher Rufo talks about. And we need a way of being able to try and turn the narrative around. But this is specifically why I will never call myself woke. I'll never describe myself as woke, because it's playing into a very specific conservative media strategy. I'll call myself a socialist. I'll call myself all of these different kind of prescriptive statements about the kind of policy that I want to see. But I'll never just kind of play into this reductive exercise of taking a very complex political ideology and describing it as woke. Because woke, in terms of what they would describe as economic policy, is something that I don't even share with the kind of woke types that they would also describe as on the liberal end that now dominate the current kind of Labour Party platform, where the current Labour Party is just a neoliberal party of capital and not a workers' party anymore, because that's what I believe is woke. But they've tried to create this false dichotomy, this false alliance between liberals who I don't agree with on economic policy and this progressive set of social policies that we might share in some respects. We just don't share any of the same economic policies, even though they would describe being pro-trade union, being pro-progressive taxation, being pro-redistribution as somehow being woke policies. It's like a nonsense dichotomy that we should never ever play into, that we should just completely ignore, because it's all nonsense. It's all nonsense. Hey there, if you enjoyed the video, make sure that you like and leave a comment. That helps the video out in the algorithm. If you subscribe and ring the bell, it'll let you know when I go live. I stream every day on YouTube and Twitch. You can also follow all of my socials down in the description. And if you want to support me in a more financial manner, there's a join button for membership. It's just 99p to be a member on YouTube, as well as a Patreon, and there's some merch there as well. And hopefully I'll catch you on the next video. Take care.